Hi, here we are again to talk about making UI components with Xcode and Swift. In the previous couple videos, we kind of worked through all of the tools and code necessary to kind of create this control here where we drag the slider and the line kind of draws around. This is working pretty good. But what I really want to do is I want to be able to swipe across here or swipe up and down to change the value. I don't want to have a slider every time, right? So let's talk about that for a minute. Like, what's involved with this and how would people actually use this, right? So you got to remember that we're going to be covering up most of this element with our finger when we're actually using it. So you're going to place your finger here and it's going to be this big blotch right here, right? And then you're going to, drag your finger across the screen. And there's a couple ways that you might interact with this, right? So first of all, you might swipe up to increase the value or swipe down to decrease the value. You might swipe left to decrease the value and right to increase the value. Or you might have to swipe along in an arc, right? Or, like if we swiped here, maybe the line should draw to the point where our finger is at. So if I swipe over here with my finger, then it should point to this position, right? I'm going to leave that up to you, how you want to do that. And I would actually encourage you as a challenge to try and create each of those situations and test them out. Maybe test them with other users and see how the other users interact with it and ask them about their experience. And say, hey, which one works best for you, because that'll tell you a lot more about how those interactions work rather than having me just give you a solution and say this is the best one, because to be honest, I'm not really sure what the best solution is, right? And it may depend on the app and how people work with the other features of the app, right? Okay. So for this example today, in this video, what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk about touch events and how we can use them to increase or decrease the value. And what I'll do for the first example is just have the value increase as we drag to the right and decrease as we go to the left. Okay? And so I'll present a solution for that, but then the other solutions you can try on your own. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to switch to Xcode. And here's our circle path class that we've been working on. I'm going to stop the simulator. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down a ways and find, the section down here with init and layout subviews. What we should really do is I haven't been putting comments in here. I kind of feel like we should have some comments. Let's kind of identify each of the areas of our code. So I'm going to put in mark. And this mark comment here, if you begin a comment with mark, colon, and the dash, what will happen is the menu here will show that comment. So if I say mark private vars here, then when I go to the menu here, actually, then of course, like it doesn't show. Oh, you know what? It's got to be all uppercase. That's why. Mark, right? So I do that. And then now you can see, oh, look, private vars shows up here and there's a line. Okay? So we'll put private vars there. And then maybe I'll do mark colon dash inspectables, right? So these are all our inspectable variables. And if I click here, you can see these are the inspectables there and it lists them. And then maybe this is one of our public properties. So we'll say mark colon public properties or vars. Actually, there's vars. I used vars earlier, right? Maybe I'll just say public vars, right? I don't know, right? We'll do it that way. I guess technically these are called properties. Anyway, so we got that. This is actually the draw method is public in our case. We might actually want to make this private. Maybe you don't want people to call draw method outside of the thing. Maybe it would be okay to leave this public. I don't know. We'll leave it like that. Maybe I should move this somewhere else though, so it's not with these guys. Well, we'll do that later. So these are our initializers here. Initialize with frame, initialize with coder. And what we'll do is we'll say, mark colon init, and then these are kind of our class methods, right? So these methods, like layout subviews, we have to override it because it belongs to our superclass, right? So what we'll do is we'll say mark overrides, class overrides, I don't know. There we go, right? So if we have any more of these, we'll put them here, and then we'll say mark, and this really should be like where we keep our private methods. I didn't really mark these private, but maybe later on we'll give each one of these like an access modifier, and we'll say, like we'll say this guy's, why can't I spell that? Yeah, there we go, private function setup, right? So I'll leave that out for now because I think I'm going to go back and kind of factor this a little bit later. So anyway, there we go. Now we're kind of organized, right? And then we can go to the menu here, and we can easily jump to any section of our code. So that was kind of an improvement. So what do we do now? Like, we want to create like touch events. So when someone touches the screen and they touch within the area of this view, what happens, right? So a touch event is made up of 4 phases, okay? There's really 3 phases and then one special circumstance. So the phases are touches began, touches moved, and touches ended. Touches began means your finger made contact with the screen, right? So that begins a touch. Touches moved means your finger moved across the screen after a touch began. And touches ended means your finger breaks contact with the screen. And that's the whole life cycle of a touch event. Okay, it does all 3 of those things. Okay, the 4th phase. The 4th phase is touches canceled. And this one happens if you're in the middle of a touch and something on the phone has to cancel the touch event. Like, for example, you get a phone call, okay? Or maybe the battery gives you a battery warning, okay? So what are we gonna do? Why don't we put our touch events here under class override? So I'm gonna say touches began. So I'll just start typing touch, and then it'll give me a list of the touch events there, and I'll choose touches began. And then underneath this one, I'll do touches moved. And then over here, we'll do touches ended. We may not even need all these, right? So what do we want to do? What I want to do here is I want to get the location on the screen where you made contact, right? So touches began, right? Well, right when a touch begins, I want to find out where it is you made contact with the screen, and then I want to save that location, right? And then on touches moved, I want to measure the distance from the location where you touched to the location that you're currently at to find how far you moved your finger. And then I want to increase the value of our value property by an amount based on how far your finger has moved, right? So what we're going to do here is we're going to need another property. So I'm going to make a var here. I'm going to call it, how about touch X, okay? And we'll make it a CG float. And we can give it, I'm going to just put this variable here with these methods because we're going to use it with these guys. You might want to keep it up the top with all of your other variables, and this could easily just be a private var. Nobody's going to want to access this outside because it only works within this touch thing, right? So, or within these touch events, right? So now how do you handle a touch, okay? Let's talk about this, right? So touches, the touches began method gives you a set of UI touch objects. So it gives you a set. So a set, if you're familiar with an array, a set is similar to an array, okay, but a little bit different. A set needs to be unique, so you can't have the same item twice in a set, okay? And otherwise, like I said, is very similar to an array. I think also in a set, the items are not ordered. Like they could be in there in any order, okay? Right, so this is what's important to us. We want to get the touch out of here. Now, why do they give us a set? Well, because you could have multiple fingers touching the screen. So every touch object in here could be one of your fingers making contact with the screen. So you could have like 5 touches or more maybe going on, or maybe 2, right? or one, if you just touch with one finger, right? For us, we're only concerned with the touch from one finger, the very first touch. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the first UI touch out of the set. So our set is called touches, right? So we'll do it this way. We'll say, let touch equal touches dot first. Okay? So that gives us our first touch. Now, this guy is going to be an optional. It's hard to see there. There's a little question mark. That's because, if the set was empty, then there wouldn't be anything in there, and we can't get the first item, so it would return nil. Now, touches only begins if you touch the screen, so we can be kind of sure that this is going to have a touch in it. So I think it's in this case, we usually don't want to do this, but I think in this case we can put the exclamation point there. Okay? And oops, I got rid of it, right? So I'll put the exclamation point there and say, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's always going to have a touch. It's not going to be optional. Okay? Okay, so we got our touch. So now what do we do with the touch? Well, every touch, I'm going to do let location equal touch dot location in view. So I want to find out like where in the view you made the touch. So our view is going to be self. Okay, so that's like where we are. Now a location has two properties. In this case, it's a CG point, and a CG point has an X and a Y. And I'm only concerned at this point with the X location because I'm just going to keep track of where your finger is on the horizontal axis, right? The Y would be the vertical axis, right? We might need both of these if we want to keep track of your finger moving along the arc, right? If we're going to position the line where you go along the arc, right? I'm just going to have you drag across, right? So let's say touch X equals location dot X. Okay, so now we've got the X location here, right? And now we can figure out like how far you moved from this position in touches moved, right? So let's kind of follow the same procedure here in the touches moved event. So we'll just say, let touch equal touches dot first, right? And again, like I said, this could have multiple touches in it, because you could make contact with more than one finger, but we're actually only concerned with the very first touch, okay? And we know there must be a touch because otherwise we wouldn't get the touches event. So we're just going to force unwrap this, right? And then we might as well get the location again, right? Because we'll need the location. So we'll say location equals touch dot location in view, and our view is self, right? So that's, because remember this class is a UI view, so we can just say self here, and this is a view that we're, that we're looking for the location in, right? And this will map this location to the coordinates of this view. So now that we got our location there, let's get, let's call this, let's say let new X equal location.x. And then let's find out like how far you moved. So let's say let delta x. So delta is like the change, right? It's like how far, what the difference is, right? So we'll say let delta x equal new x minus touch x. Maybe touch x should have really been like start x, or I don't know. Anyway, I think we'll just leave it like that, right? And then, just for testing, what we'll do is we'll print the value here, okay? So we'll say print delta x, okay? And then let's give it a try, right? I'm not going to use touch as ended here. Maybe we'll use it for something later, but we don't need it in this case, right? And then I didn't set up touch as canceled, but you could set up something here. So if you're in the middle of a touch event, maybe you want to, check where it is you touched on the screen when the event gets canceled. So I'll leave those there. I'll just leave these here for, just for reference, but we're actually not going to use those. Okay, so let's give this a test. I'll test it in the simulator. And now as I swipe across the screen, you can see it says negative 99 pixels. And as I go back over here, 0.5 pixels. This is right about where, right there, 0. That's right where I began touching the screen. And as I drag this way, the numbers become positive. So they're getting positive to the right, negative to the left. Now my problem here is my number says 99, but if you remember, the value that we set for the line is in the range of 0 to 1. So when the value is 0, the line goes all the way back to the beginning, and when the value is 1, it goes all the way to the end. So these numbers are way too large, right? Because if I just drag just like a tiny fraction like that, that's like half the distance of my line. And now that's the whole distance, right? And I barely moved, right? So we need to scale this value down some before we can actually apply it. You can give that a try on your own. I'll finish this off in the next video, but if you want to try it, why don't you try scaling delta x down to a smaller range and then applying it, adding it to value, right? Okay, and so really what we want to do is we want to remember the original value and then add the delta value to it to get the difference. We don't want to keep adding onto it each update, right? So I don't know, you'll see what I mean by that in the next video, right? So give it a try on your own, okay? And thanks for watching.